So we're going to take a quick look at an A-grade example answer for narrative writing. This is an IGCSE question for the Cambridge exam board, but it works for any real IGCSE or GCSE that you're doing. And the principles of narrative writing exams are the same. So even if you're not doing any kind of GCSE, a narrative question is marked roughly the same across all exam boards. If you're doing a kind of higher level, like age 16 plus, the standard they expect is a little bit higher, but they still use the same criteria as if you're age 14 to 16. So yeah, this is useful for anyone doing a narrative question. Narrative writing is story writing. So basically this is a story question. So a student did this for me a couple of years ago and I marked it for him and he got a 29 out of 40, which is really good, 72%. That's a kind of low borderline A grade. I'm going to go through my writing, my feedback on it as well, so you can see not only the question that he answered, but also the way that an examiner looked at, how they're going to mark it. I'm going to just give you a minute to kind of read through the story yourself and develop a few of your own opinions. So I've not changed any of the grammar. I've not changed anything that he did about it. Some things are really amazing about it and some things obviously need improvement. So I want you to see for yourself if you can figure out what those are, because if you can train your own brain to see what's good and what is not so good about a piece of work, then your own writing is going to become a lot better as well, because you know what an examiner is looking for. So yeah, I'll just kind of scroll slowly through the story. You can kind of pause and read each section of it as I scroll.
Very brown, my friend.
Good. Yeah, so hopefully you've kind of read through that story. It's very kind of dynamic and exciting. So things that you might think are really brilliant about it, if we kind of have a look at my notes, there's a lot of techniques being used. So onomatopoeia, simile, metaphor, rhetorical question, a range of imagery, emotive language. It's very emotional and dramatic, quite a lot of repetition. I feel like he uses reasonably good vocabulary already, but it could be more advanced even. They like you to use very precise, very specific words that are sometimes surprising or unusual or kind of unexpected. There's a flashback structure, which I don't think is perfectly achieved in this story, but I think it's very, it's very good that he structurally kind of uses it that way. There's a range of sentences. There's a range of punctuation, so things like brackets, parenthesis, exclamation marks, question marks, ellipsis, colon. There's a one sentence paragraph he should get in there at the like here, for example, my moment has come. So the shape of the story, if you look at it on the page, it's not regular. Sometimes people try and write stories where, every paragraph is the same, kind of like an essay. Really not good to do that because it feels too formulaic and too standard. So with creative writing, you want this variety of paragraph length and this variety of sentence length. It doesn't feel like an essay. It's not too formal, but it does use a good level of vocabulary. There's a nice range of dialogue versus prose. So there's descriptive sections and then more action-based sections with speech. So that's excellent as well. There's possibly a little bit too many exclamation marks or question marks or that kind of thing. I would say like he needs a little bit more control on that, but I feel that that's done intentionally to create more drama and energy to the scene, which it succeeds in doing. There's some really beautiful little images as well. Through the narrow hole, a pallid, old-looking man was lying on the floor with all of his energy lost. That's really beautiful. That could appear in a published novel, I think. So sometimes this guy has control over his language to a point where it could be even, believably a real story that is published somewhere. I like this as well. His weird appearance reminded me of the ugliest ghost I've ever seen. It's kind of like a strange, almost humorous image. So I think the characterization is excellent here, the way that he creates characters. The energy and the dynamism is really excellent. There's like, imprisonment, breaking out of prison, running away. There's secret items that passed from one person to another. This abandoned book is nice. So yeah, there's nice little details and elements to the story. I feel like the bigger picture of what is the setting is a little bit harder to imagine. You can sort of see it here, this prison, but you need a bit of more of a detail, like more of a backstory of why is this person in prison, what's happening here. You need a little bit more of a description of the setting to make it feel a little bit more real. And yeah, and so it's like a death camp, but we want detail and precision. Like when, what's the time period, what country is this, why is it happening? So it's a very generalized setting. It needs to be more specific. That would actually be better achieved in the planning stage of the story than the writing. So if you write like this, where you have really good characters and action, but you're not so great with your setting, you can think about actually planning that setting in detail before you start writing, and then using some of those details to open up your text. So yeah, nice little story, I think. In terms of marking, I actually gave a suggestion for extra vocabulary here, so you can kind of have a look at that if you're interested in how to make your vocabulary even more precise and specific. In terms of grading, it gets a reasonably good sort of content and ideas organization grade. It gets a little bit lower, I would say, on the spelling, punctuation, grammar type stuff. So the grammar, if you're a native speaker, you might have noticed is a little bit off. Like the fundamental problem of humanity is nobody else but themselves, or are nobody else but themselves. The grammar is probably the thing I would say that lets it down the most. Grammar is a hard thing to fix, and it just takes time and energy, really. So over time, if you read a lot and you write a lot and you get feedback on what you write, and then you practice specific grammar points like how to do verbs, how to do adjectives, that kind of thing, you'll get to a point where you can do grammar well. So that's an ongoing process, and it takes everyone time to do that. So yeah, this has been a very short little lesson. Hopefully it's useful for you, and you can see a little bit more like how an examiner would actually think about an answer and how they would grade an answer and why. Hopefully you enjoyed the story too. I really like this one. It's very fun. So yeah, thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys soon in a future lesson. Goodbye for now.